Hello YouTube, N64 here, I'm back. Thanks for tuning in again as always, it's very much appreciated. What we're going to go through on this video is episode 11 of Mission N64 239. So for those who are unfamiliar with this, we're aiming to complete and review all 239 UK PAL N64 games. That's right, all of them. I've completed 10 games so far this year already on the channel. I'll put a link in the description for anyone who's interested in seeing what we've done so far. So episode 11, Killer Instinct Gold. I did a short on this the other day instantly, and I had a quick go on it. I thought this is interesting, this is fun. I could do this game pretty quickly. What did I know? And yeah, it looked pretty fun, and I thought it's an episode I could get out pretty quickly. What I touched base on my short was that this has got the original receipt with it, and the person bought it 2 days after release. It came out on the Friday, they went and got it on the Sunday. They actually returned Mortal Kombat Trilogy. They're obviously unhappy with that, it's a very underwhelming game. And they traded it for another fighting game, the newly released Killer Instinct Gold. Yeah, I don't think they would have been disappointed, really. And yeah, anyone complaining about game prices in 2025, well, let me tell you this. It cost them £47.99. They actually got a net refund because Mortal Kombat Trilogy was more. But £47.99 in 1997, that equates to £95, give or take, in today's money. So yeah, inflation adjusted, that's a lot more expensive than what a game would typically cost you. What, 40 quid, 50 quid on release now? So yeah, don't have too many complaints, really. But yeah, interesting game, very difficult. But what they do supply with the game, or what they did supply, was a moves poster. It's a really interesting bit of paperwork, and it just sort of surmises the sort of techniques and combos you can use for certain fighting characters and what that will yield if you press those combinations. And it did come in handy. I did have to refer to this because I found myself just smashing buttons randomly to try and beat enemies, and this came in handy basically. And yeah, you definitely need to become more seasoned at the game to sort of work your way up through the difficulties. It's not a game that you can just be a demon at straight away. You sort of need to learn the certain blocks and counter attacks and so on. Before we get into it then, we'll just refer to the magazine as we usually do, just to see how the game rated. Killer Instinct, 62%. Great in its time, but who wants a 2D beat 'em up in light of Tekken and even MK4, Mortal Kombat 4 on the N64? Yeah, I see where they're going with it. You know, we're in a world where we're heading towards 3D gaming. Why do you want to just do a 2D fighting arcade game that's already been done well before on the Super Nintendo? You're kind of expecting a little bit more by this point. I can empathise with that because I had the same view on Tarzan, which was a 2.5D side-scrolling game. But at the same time, you know, if it works and it's not broke, why try and fix it? So yeah, without further ado then, let's get into it with an open mind and see what it's all about. Voiceover N64 here, I'm back. So Killer Instinct Gold. It is a 1996 fighting game developed by the legendary Rare and published by Nintendo. It released November 1996 in North America, but did not release in the UK until 4th of July 1997, bizarrely. There are 5 difficulty settings, and even on normal mode it is extremely challenging. There are 3 speeds, and I went for slow so not to blow up my very modest laptop. And you can also change the degree of blood in the menu, which was a nice effect to add. The game is essentially a port of the arcade game Killer Instinct 2 with some subtle differences, visually and audio downgrades, but the backgrounds were improved. You control a fighter on a 2D plane, but you're set against a 3D pre-rendered backdrop. After the success of Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo, Rare got to work with a sequel which was later shuffled to development for the Nintendo 64. It was originally targeted to be a launch title, but got delayed several months. It was cool to see the return of some well-known characters for those of us that remember the original Killer Instinct game on the Super Nintendo. Spinal, Glacius, and a few others, as well as some known characters from Killer Instinct 2, Tusk and Maya, and a new entrant, Kim Woo, totaling 10 playable characters initially. The final boss, Gargos, was also a playable character by inputting a code on the title screen. Despite this nice range of characters, some fans were disappointed that fan favourites like Sindor and Riptor did not make their return to the series. As I aforementioned, the game is very difficult, very challenging, and you need to invest time in learning the characters' movesets, their attributes, their qualities, and how to maximise their potential. The game is seemingly not one that you can pick up and be really good at right off the rip. The game is all about using combos, and very rewarding when you can learn how to make good combos and also counter and break combos from your opposition, something I did not do very well when getting obliterated by the very OP computer, even on normal mode. Some fighting games require patience and picking the opportune moment to strike. Killer Instinct, not so much like this, and rewards aggression, ultimately attack being the best form of defence in this game. However, I will say, Just button smashing on this game alone is not enough to save the day. You need to be able to hit those combos in order to defeat your opponents efficiently, effectively, and accurately. So in order to beat the game, I've entered the arcade mode, and it is relatively quick to run your way through the entire game, but you have to beat your way through all 10 opponents until you reach the final boss, Gargos, and then defeat them. As with most fighting games, it is the first to 2 knockouts, but in this game, it's a continuous fight until the sooner of 2 knockouts has happened for either opponent. Fortunately, you do have infinite retries on this mode, so if you die, then you get to go again and again and again continuously, which is a saving grace as I've mentioned, it's not an easy game in the slightest. There is no option to save once you've entered the arcade mode, so you're fully committed to playing the game all the way through if you want to beat the game and dedicate time for the long haul. It took me about 90 minutes to fully beat the game, that's including all my retries, and it can be done a lot faster, and most likely if you're superior at the game than I am. At the end of each fight, you get to see a summary of how many combos were used, the damage inflicted, and the time it took for you to beat your opponent, which is a useful summary to see at the end of the fight. You can see a summary of this here, and then onwards into our next fight against Glacius, a very resilient opponent and a difficult one to beat, I found. Controls wise, they're okay, though the N64 controller is not the most friendly for this. The analog stick is an absolute no-go, but it does work well with the D-pad. Attacking wise, you're using a combination of the 4 C buttons and the A and B buttons, and that does become a bit fiddly at times, and it probably would be far more optimal to use an arcade stick of some sort to battle it out with your opponents on this game. Full transparency, my left thumb was beginning to hurt towards the end, as the N64 D-pad is not the most ergonomically friendly design, and when you are smashing buttons for an over hour like I was tending to do, it does take its toll. Due to the fast-paced nature of the game, I'd find myself panicking, smashing buttons, relentlessly trying to, any way possible, find a combination that would deliver the killer blow to the opponent. This is really where studying the moves and combos Poster provided with the game more closely would have paid more dividends. When you hear Supreme Victory at the end of the round, what that means is you've defeated your opponent while still on your first bar of health, something we should all be striving for on this game to maximise our potential. Moving on to the score, the game's soundtrack, it's really good, it gives a nice arcade feel, exactly what it's intended to do, and it's motivational, gets you pumped, gets you in the mood to fight, and gets you wanting to create as many combinations as you can. Great soundtrack to this game. Multiplayer wise, it offers up to 2 players where you can battle it out with your opponents, but you can also enter tournaments as well, and you can have up to 8 of you contesting, which is great really. You can have a big party of you all fighting it out against each other, round upon round. This would only really work in practice if you're all a similar level, because it's very easy to get owned on this game very quickly, easy to get dominated. If you're not able to break combos and deliver combos of your own, you're not going to last against a more seasoned opponent for very long. I found this fight quite troublesome. Spinal's a difficult opponent anyway. You've got all the skeletons in the background that he kind of blends in with. There's a lot going on. The music's quite daunting, and yeah, I kind of resorted to noob tactics in this fight. Just keep it going for low blows, similar shots, whatever was working really. And sometimes you have to do that in these sort of fights. If you find a combo that kind of works, just stick with it really and ride it out. It's not always about winning in the most attractive way. It's about getting through if you're someone like me, and if there's something that works, then try and use it as much as you can. Killer Instinct Gold is a fun and enjoyable game, but it is very challenging, and if you learn how to master it, it can be very rewarding to beat on a normal difficulty. It's by no means a gimme. There is more content to uncover and explore with this game, so if you beat the game on a normal difficulty, you find out about the character's backstory when you complete it, and there's further information, bits of the puzzle to uncover when you beat it on a harder difficulty, which it alludes to on the screen once you've completed the game. So there is incentive there to go back and try and beat it on a harder difficulty. And then obviously there are more sub-stories for each character to find out more about. Here we are getting towards the business end of the arcade mode now, fighting Kim Woo, a very worthy opponent and difficult one to beat. And they are a new entrant into the Killer Instinct series. And yes, by no means an easy opponent to beat at all. I'm not entirely convinced how, but somehow, some way, I managed to get past Kim Woo and once this round is complete, that takes us to the penultimate fight. Whilst I've enjoyed my playthrough of this game up until this moment, what I would say is that I can't help but think back to those comments in the magazine that we read before we started, and yeah, they are probably onto something there by saying this isn't exactly breaking new boundaries. It's essentially a slightly upgraded version of its predecessor. It is enjoyable, it is fun, but you know, in an era where you're expecting innovation, change, I'm not convinced there's been overly much of that in this game, but it has been pleasant nonetheless. So after defeating Fulgor, this takes us to the final showdown with Gargos, and contrary to what I said earlier, being a bit more cautious against them proved to be the more optimal strategy I found. This isn't an opponent that you can go in all guns blazing, and it paid to be a bit more standoffish and strike, or even indeed counter-strike at the more opportune moment, and then once you get a sort of combo going, to gain momentum and keep hitting away whilst you're in momentum and striking while the iron's hot. You can see me doing this now. I've managed to gain some momentum, and once the striking is on, you start to wound deep and get as many hits in as you can, and to try and finish him off. There was a small respite here where he knocked me down, but I managed to keep going and eventually deliver that final blow and to defeat him, which was a pleasant experience because it was proving very challenging. You can see how elated I was when I finally beat the game. I cannot emphasize enough how difficult it was to get to this stage. I had to cut out many failed attempts to slimline this video down. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I would give it a strong 7 out of 10. I'm convinced it is the best arcade fighter on the N64 from everything I've witnessed until this point. Granted, the game is not the most innovative in terms of testing the new technology, the power of the N64, but you have to be mindful that it was an early release, and it does make you wonder what Rare could have done had they produced a sequel, perhaps later in the N64's life, towards the year 2000, for example. And yeah, it was a more challenging game, but very rewarding all the same. What I found interesting was you see Ken Lobb's name there in the voice credits. Well, he worked for Nintendo of America back in the day, and he had a very close affiliation with Rare. They even named an awful gun after him in GoldenEye, the Club, as a joke. He voiced Gargos and possibly some of the other characters on the game, and I think it's just a nice touch that he made it into the game and shows what a sort of affiliation he had with Rare, really. So that is it, guys. Killer Instinct Gold, episode 11 of Mission N64 239 is now complete at last. Pleased to have got that one out there. Pleased to have beaten another fighting game. It's definitely better than Clay Fighter 63 1/3. So I think some of the other fighters are downhill from here. Some of the Mortal Kombats are disappointing and Flying Dragon in comparison. But always expecting a good game of Rare in that sort of era. They were smashing out games and they were sort of excelling in almost every game that they sort of brought out, especially on the N64. It was like their baby. Whilst it didn't break boundaries in terms of like the sort of generation, in terms of taking things into a new realm, it was pretty good. It was an enjoyable playthrough. What I will say is it was very difficult. I found it very hard, even on a normal difficulty. It wasn't easy. It's not a game that you can just pick up and be a demon at. You need to learn the moves, learn the characters, and sort of get into it and invest time into it. And then it will become more rewarding. Obviously, I'm trying to beat games very quickly on this journey. So it did become a tad frustrating at times, but in the end, I walked away happy knowing that I could beat the game on a medium difficulty. I would have felt like I was cheating if I went on an easier difficulty, which weren't easy, by the way. The next difficulty down still was not easy, to my mind. Very easy might have been, but I never tried that. Yeah, and I dread to think what difficult and very difficult would be like. I'd just get owned completely on those. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one. Episode 12 will be coming to the channel in the not too distant future, so stay tuned for that. Hoping that it'll be Banjo-Kazooie. It's a game that I do want to get to. I've just got to complete Indie on the PS5 so I can give my undivided attention to Banjo, because it's a slightly longer game, I believe, and one that I want to fully enjoy, fully immerse into, and not have it on my mind that I've still got other games that I'm playing from the current generation. If you're new to the channel or you're a returning viewer and you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. It really helps me out, helps the channel grow, and yeah, helps me feel like my content is being appreciated, and we want to build a community up here and bring more of you along with me on this journey to complete all 239 UK Power N64 games. Drop a comment, let me know if you've played this game before, if you played it back in the day, or if you've played it in modern times, what you think about this game. Is it as bad as they said in the magazine, 62%? Or is it better than that? Have you got a lot of positive memories? I know a lot of people like these arcade-style fighting games, and not overly my sort of thing, but I did enjoy it, and I do like playing them. Probably more so with friends when you can get really competitive. But yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this game. And if you enjoyed the video, please whack a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Continue.